Back in our seats. Chuck, thank you. He had me tied down, wouldn't let me up. Next on the agenda, I'm going to introduce Larry. Before I do that, Larry asked to do this presentation, and it's timely, but I need to give you some background. As you all know, Dan Liniger is our liaison to Troon and manages that relationship. Dan and I don't know, until he goes away and leaves me for 6 weeks, we meet monthly with Matt Malloy, the Senior Vice President for Operations at Troon, who manages our operation here. A couple of months ago, it would have been, because it was before Dan left, we asked him to take some of Larry's thinking and put it through the Troon mill. And we asked him to put together a 4-year plan, a 2-year plan, and a 1-year plan. And he sent that to me on Tuesday. I gave it to the board the same day that I got it. Lee Lexell is in Florida. He's the chairman of our golf committee. We have had no time to discuss it yet. Dan and I haven't had any time to discuss it yet. And so there's a lot of moving pieces to how do we get to a solution set for the preserve renovation. Larry's got some thoughts and ideas about funding that project, and I'm going to let him share them here today. And what I need you to know is that on September 11th, we're going to have a town hall meeting sponsored by the golf committee that's really going to be Troon Day. And Matt Malloy will be here with some of his experts to talk to us. One of the subject items will be the preserve renovation and their evaluation of those various courses of action. And so they'll share their thinking with us on September 11th. So mark your calendars. That'd be a good golf committee town hall to attend. So with that, Larry, I'd like to give you the mic.
Can I use it? I can use it. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Does everyone have paper and pencil out there?
Yes.
Good. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so what's going on here is we're just going to begin a dialogue to form a plan to fund the preserve golf course renovation. This is not the plan. This is the first stab at forming one. So I don't have the answers, but I do have a broad brush of ideas. And the answers are going to come from everybody here and everybody here, okay? So let's go to the next slide. The first thing that I did was Troon was asked the question, you have over 800 courses that you manage and take care of. How many of those in a year do you totally redo in a 1-year time? The answer was around 10 out of 800 plus. So what happens with the rest of the courses that you redo? They're done over a period of years, okay? So I took that and I looked at 29 and I see this chart that says we're gonna need $9+ million to do this course. 5 years from now, we don't know what inflation's gonna do. We don't know how we're gonna accumulate all those funds without having future boards get into those funds for something else that comes up. So it's one of those things where if you wait till 29, you may have to be kicking that can down the road for a number of years until, let's say, your irrigation totally fails and blows up on you. So how do we approach this, given the fact that Troon said most of their stuff is done over a period of years? So what I've done is I've looked over a period of, actually starting in 24, how do we come up with funds and how do we do some of this stuff without having actual numbers yet, okay? So, what are some sources of funds? We have existing funds. I'm going to get into that next. Do we have reserve funds, SIF funds, interest? And then I call it donations, the pickleball methodology, because that would be for work that is not a normal renovation item, repair and maintenance item, and it's kind of like what pickleball did. They went out and got funding and got donations to do their project. And I've been told by people in this community that that is a possibility that probably could be done, okay? So anything that would be a change of the golf course, would be funded outside of the POA. Next one.
Could I ask a question?
Certainly.
The pickleball, was that money outside of the pickleball members?
Okay, I was the president when we built the first 6 courts, and we got all but 35 grand to build those first 6 courts from 200 members. Now, when the $1.5 million was funded, Sean can tell you all about that, but the members went out and got funding from advertising, whatever, plus membership, and they came up with about $1 million?
$750,000, and it wasn't the member.
Okay, well, $750,000. Yeah. Okay, well, I mean, it's substantial amounts of money. Okay? So this is something that I've been told from golfers, that this is a possibility, that probably could happen. And we're not talking the normal renovation, we're talking changes to the course that they would like to see. Okay, so here we go. Let's talk about existing funds and where they come from. So what happened here is that in 2024, which is now, we were scheduled to make 6 payments on the golf loan from this last 6 months of the POA stuff. 6 payments, July through December. We only made 1 out of those funds. That left us $595,000 that was allocated for a golf course payment that we didn't use. So I'm pulling that off to the side. Now, on the special assessment, we had some money left in the checking account that didn't pay for construction. We also made 1 payment, July, out of the 6 that were allocated. So the bottom line was we didn't spend $852,000 out of the special assessment. That special assessment was to pay off the loan. What's the loan? A golf course. So I'm allocating that as part of future funding for the preserve. If those funds go into an interest-bearing account from September on, that's another 19 plus. So by the end of this year, we could have set aside $1,467,000 for future renovation of the preserve. Okay? Everyone got me so far? All right,
I'm confused. We paid off $4.2 million, and we raised $4.77 million. How did we get the $800,000?
We had just under $500,000 still in the checking account that wasn't used for the construction. That was paid down on the loan. We also made $119,000 in a payment. And so if you take everything and what the final payoff was, we ended up with $852,000.
Okay.
It's just math.
So you've commingled. Okay, now I know what you've done.
Okay, I just took everything that was there that was for the loan and for the construction that wasn't used, and I said, what's the bottom line on the special assessment that didn't actually go out the door? That's what the number came to, okay?
I don't think people thought they were doing that. I think they thought they were paying that special assessment to pay off the loan.
It did pay off the loan.
Yeah.
And we told them there'd be some excess.
Really?
Yeah. We told them, didn't we tell you there'd be some excess? Oh, okay. Okay, let's get on to the next one. Let's head on into 25 now, okay? So, we're waiting on Matt here to push the button.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
See,
Okay.
my finger only works when I talk, Larry.
So let's talk about 25 funding and uses. First of all, we're going to carry over the $1,467,000. So in this plan, and like I say, this is something that everyone's got to look at and say, put your finger on it, and if you don't like what you see, change the numbers, okay? I'm saying let's take $650,000 of this year's 25's reserve funds and allocate it towards the future renovation. Now, how we come up with that, for the next 3 years, we were going to make $1,450,000 in payments on the loan. Next 3 years. So I'm saying, well, we don't have to pay that loan anymore, so that frees up $1,450,000 to go into the reserve for other items. Let's take a piece of it and set it aside for the future renovation. Just a piece of it. That's what I'm coming up with right now. You guys put your own numbers on it. SIF funds, I'm saying for the next 4 years, let's take 550 out of the SIF. If there's excess, leave it into the other fund. If it's less, then we'll pull a little extra out from that to offset what we're missing. Interest, and I'm saying 3.5%. And the reason I'm saying that is I have to look at history now and where our inflation is going. It's been running just under 3% now. And what happened over the past 5 years or 10 years as opposed to where we're at today. So being conservative, I'm only saying 3.5%. 75 grand. So by the end of the year, we got 2.74 mil. Now let's use some of that because right now we're being told that the pump station is 65,000? Okay, and so we're going, okay, let's say it costs a little more because we don't know. I'm throwing in 500 grand for the pump station. That leaves us 2.24 to go into next year. One other thing that we need to consider here, which is really part of the construction costs, is coming up with a plan for the renovation. Actually hiring a firm to do the, plan to do it, okay? The design work. Because you can't start irrigation if you don't know what you're going to irrigate. So we got to have the design first. So that would come out of this money also. Whether it comes out in 25 or early 26, it's all part of I consider it all part of the construction. Next slide.
Wait, Larry, before you go on, I have a question. So this all works great in a vacuum if you're just looking at golf. You have $5.6 million coming up next year in reserve items that need to be purchased besides golf. That needs to be fixed. So this works in a vacuum, but does it work in a total integrated?
Well, all I'm saying is that you don't have to put anything in here and look at the 29 or 28 and not have any money set aside. This would be part of the funding process, and by taking 650 out, it still leaves you about 2.8 million for other reserve items, which means we gonna have to kind of tighten our belts a little bit, not look for really big enhancements, just maintaining what we have for the next few years. I mean, that's what we have to decide here, okay? That's why everybody here is going to put their fingers on this, come up with new numbers, what we have left over to put on the other side, and that kind of stuff.
Larry, what percentage would the board have to put in reserve? I'm talking about the SIF funds. What percentage would the board have to be put in reserves to make that 550,000?
Well, it'd be close to the whole thing. Yeah,
That's
close to the whole thing. You might have if we have a year like this year where we're going to have, probably 200 homes, okay. Or if you increase the SIF fees, you say, then you'd have more.
Yeah, if we increase the SIF fees, that'll bring additional $300,000 a year into SIF.
We've got an integrated program in the reserves that cover all of it. Obviously, the numbers are going to have changed now that we've paid that off. You're going to see some different numbers of money available in the reserves because of that, but it's an integrated reserve study. We're not setting aside these dollars for the preserve, and we're looking at the whole reserve study, not just a piece of it. So a lot of that money you're talking about will be available in the reserve. Obviously, paying off the loan is creating some additional money that we wouldn't have had because of the interest that we're giving, that we no longer have to pay. But it's only the interest we're saving. The capital part of it hasn't changed any. We've saved some interest.
Hey, Duff, if I could, let's get through the presentation, and then Larry will be happy to take all the questions, but let him get through all of his slides, and then we'll talk about whatever your observations are about the merits of the logic and how we fit it into what we typically do in building an integrated financial plan.
Yeah, the 650 would be something that would be part of the reserve budget each year, okay? I mean, you can call it anything you want. I just do this so that we can keep track of what we have to do to fund this course. Let's go to 26.
Next slide.
26. So we have some money coming forward, and once again, we're going to take 650 of reserve funds, we're going to take 550 of SIF funds. Now, the next item, I call it special assessment of $100 for 3,225 homes. You might be able to even call that donations using the pickleball situation. We don't know, because we don't know exactly what all the costs are at this time and what the pieces are. So it's just there. In order to fund this thing, we're going to have to come up with some extra money other than SIF and reserve funds. And this is where everybody gets involved here and produces their ideas. Once again, I took the interest back down to 3% because we're hoping that inflation will continue to drop. Now, in this year, I'm figuring construction will start. We don't know what it's going to start on because there's all kinds of methodologies. One is you do 9 holes with the irrigation, and then the next year you do 9 holes with the irrigation. You could do 9 holes of irrigation in 1 year and then a top out the next year, which would be less expensive than the irrigation. You could do a combination where you put the irrigation in towards the area where your greens and bunkers have been changed, but you don't activate it yet. So I've been told there's a lot of variations, and until you have your design, you can't come up with a number. So I'm just throwing the 2.4 in there as a number. Once we have good figures, we can start adjusting all this. Let's go to the next one. 28. 28? Are we in 28? I'm going to, okay. Same thing in 27. You got another $100, but now we have 3,250 homes. I'm taking the interest down to 2.5%, thinking this is where we were a few years back. Spend another 2.4 mil, and now we only have 600 grand left over to go to 28. 28 would be the last year, second to last year of construction. So let's go to 28. Same situation, carry over some funds, 650, 550. Now, here's where it gets a little dicey, because I'm putting down 300 special assessment on 3,275 homes. Once again, some of this could be donations. Some of this, when we get to the end of this, we'll see that we may not be spending the amount of money that I'm anticipating here, okay? So when we're all done here, we're going to spend another 2.4 mil. I did that every single year till we get to last year, until we know. So let's do the carryover to 475 and go to 29. So I better flip my thing. 29. Carryover, special assessment, a little bit of interest. So what happens here is that this leaves 2.7 million left from funding. After spending the 2.4 million for 3 years, leaves 2.7 to finish the job. All right, go to the next one. So here's what we got. So far, funds produced, 9.9 million. Funds provided, that's for the course. Funds provided for the pump, 500,000, a total of 10,000,004. The money came from the reserve, 3.2, came from the SIF, 2.7, special assessments, 2.6, interest, 300, and what I didn't put on here was the carryover from 24, okay? That's the source of these funds. I gotta believe that, you know, it's been told everyone it's gonna take 9.2 million. Well, if there's not enough money there to cover it, then we gotta start over again. Okay, next slide. The unknowns, obviously, actual cost and timing, scope of the work, what portion is to be covered by donations, and what portion is going to come from special assessments. We don't know until we get a plan. We don't know, okay, until the course gets done. Let's go to the next slide. We'll get some big numbers here. Pass this one for a second, and let's go to the next one. Okay, so here's what we've got. I got some numbers from Troon, and what they did was they put a thing together where if you did it in 1 year, 2025, if you did it over 2 years, if you did it over 4 years, and if you did it all in 29. Now, they used a 6% inflation factor. I gotta believe that's a little high. I'm gonna give you some numbers to put next to those at 3%. So, if you did it using the 3%, and you did it over 4 years, you're gonna have 8.920. 8.920 grand total. Okay, now they're saying it's going to take 4 months of lost revenue for each year if you do it over 4 years. The problem with doing it in 1 year, they're saying it's only going to take 8 months. We've been there, done that, and I think we kind of know that doesn't work. So I'm not even going there with that. The lost revenue would be a lot greater than that. If you do it in 2 years, they're saying 6 months each year, which is probably pretty close. And if you do it over 2 years, wait a minute, I got the figures down here. Yeah, wait a minute. 2 years, 2 years, 2 years. I got too many numbers for me. Let's go to 29. If you did it all at once, their total cost by the time you add everything up is a little over 10 million. If you do it at 3%, it's 9.274 million. So that's somewhere in that range, 9.2 to 10. I came up with what, 10 point something on my stuff? So I think we're in the range. The question is, would we do this over the 4-year period? Would we do it over a 2-year period? Or would we wait to 29 with all the unknowns and do it then and try to accumulate enough money to do it then? So let's go back up one, Matt. So here's what I'm asking for. I want you guys to help put this thing together, okay? I mean, this was just the first attempt with a broad brush, trying to figure out possible funding sources and dollars. I want you to all look at it, pick out the pieces you like and the pieces you don't or you think need an adjustment and do it. Come up with a schedule for me or some verbiage and changes and get it to me. I put it in my box. You can take it to the front desk, put it in my box. I want everybody at the table here to do something. I want our residents to do something because I want to sit down with some other folks and knock this thing out again so we can have number 2 to go after. You know, a second time, we're going to go through the same thing, and it may take a third time and a fourth time. Hopefully, Troon will give us more information, more detailed information that we can incorporate in this because it's going to have a big impact on every number we have. But once again, this was just the beginning. And I know that everyone wants to maintain all of the facilities we have in a way that solves problems but doesn't create any more. I'm simply trying to open up the discussion and analysis given the limited information I have at this time. And there does seem to be a non-disruptive path that we can follow with the help of everyone. So I'm just soliciting help, okay? That's it.
Thanks, Larry. Questions for Larry? Mike, please. That way.
What about dues? The POA? How are you factoring that? What kind of
didn't.
increase?
All I took on this was I'm saying allocate the $650 out of the reserve funds each year in order to fund this thing. As far as the dues go and stuff, that all depends on what other things have to be done. Okay? This is just one piece of the reserve. It's like saying, I got to buy a new truck every year. That's all this is, but the money's bigger.
Larry, one of the things I looked at is the operating income statement that Mark put out. And what I looked at is your projection of how many homes would be when you were doing any calculation. And you exceed the number of possible total homes that are out there to be built on every single lot in 28. Because we can only have 3272. 92, I'm sorry. And the projection is that those lots, those last lots, are going to take another 5 years past this schedule to sell if they sell at all. So I think we have to work with this to get it using the same numbers that the rest of the process has agreed upon or is working toward, because we have to be working with the same set of core numbers. And we do need to look at something in relationship to dues and the rest of the reserve fund needs. I can't see that this makes it possible for people to be in favor of it and not do some of the other things that are out there. The carpet in this building is disgusting. The furniture is filthy. We need to not put all that off. There's going to have to be more paid for. So I just need to see this whole thing rolled out with all the pieces. I can't even imagine that we would segregate golf funds in the reserve from something else. At least has to show together.
Well, you segregate when they do the new air conditioners. You put that in there every year over a number of years. You do the same with roads. This is nothing
but
more
you're
than
not
doing
showing the whole
same thing.
picture. There's only so many. You're taking a bunch of money
you
out.
come up with road funds, to do the roads, you say, here's what we need for roads. All this does is saying, here's what we need to get this course done. And it's part of the plan of the reserve.
But when we look at, as you say, the golf course, the roads, the property site, we look at them all on the same piece of paper. We can't just pull this out and say this. And I'm not saying that this is bad. I'm just saying it is not connected to the whole plan.
We need, you've thrown some numbers up here from Troon. I have not seen those numbers other than what you'd have. It is feasible. We can take those Troon numbers and plug them into the reserve study and see what happens. The only ones that I saw that are meaningful in that are that last slide where they're saying this is the cost of the project if we do it in 4 years, 2 years. All the other numbers you're throwing out there are part of the reserve study. Those numbers are in there. As the reserve study is revised with the changes with the payoff of the golf loan. So it's got to be plugged into that, and it can't be done in isolation. You have to plug it in and see what happens to the reserve study.
Yeah, we just got these numbers a couple days, was it 2 days ago we got these numbers?
Tuesday, we got it
Tuesday. So you're right, these need to be plugged in, but I got to believe that when they get together on the 11th, they're going to have a lot better numbers, and then that would be plugged in and carried forward with this stuff. Right now, these are numbers they gave us, you know what I mean? It's probably going to, well, we know they're going to change.
Well, I think for the benefit of everybody here, because we're getting a feel from what I was trying to do for our community. You can see this conversation has to go into another forum, right? And that forum is going to be exclusively about strategies related to solving this problem that Larry's put in front of us today. So this is a good primer. This is good food for thought. I agree, it's not an integrated approach that we typically work in, but it's a start point for conversation with the community. It doesn't change anything that we've talked about as far as strategies. We owe it to the community to exhaust ourselves on each of the strategies so they can look at them and provide feedback to us. At some point, we'll have to get to a decision on what strategy makes sense for the Saddlebrook HOA2 Corporation. So we're not there yet. There's a lot of work for us to do. But I am going to do this in a public forum. Okay, there's never going to be another opportunity to take future boards to the woodshed over the plans associated that we're going to develop here. We're going to develop it very publicly, and everybody's going to have a chance to voice their opinions. At the end of the day, the board's going to have to approve a budget. And so, Larry, thank you very much for taking your thinking and bringing it to this body. This is the way I see us winning here, and including residents. I'm sure there's some folks here that'll get some more folks excited about paying attention to how this logic train unfolds. Let me tell you about obligations of the board as far as the corporation is concerned. By law, our responsibility is to seek expert advice. That's what Troon brings us. Troon's not a resident. There's 5,500 of us out here. We all got thoughts and opinions. The board has to rely on expert advice. And that's what we've done in bringing Troon into this conversation. And we've given them the task of coming before the community and articulating the pros and cons associated with each of the ideas that Larry's thrown out here. Now, the truth is, Lee Lexell and his committee have had no time to review and weigh in on the thinking that Troon has provided us. And obviously, they're in the advice business as well, providing it to both the Finance Committee and to the board. And so there's a lot of things for us to get our hands around. Clearly, we're going to produce an integrated financial plan. Okay? We're not changing the way that we built this. The POA question was the number one thing on everybody's mind out there is how are we going to do all the things we have to do, and what are the second and third order effects on what my POA is going to be and how much money you're going to take out of my pocket. And why wouldn't the residents want to know that? What Larry's tried to do is put together ideas to minimize the impact on residents. So it's a different approach to working his way to solving that piece of the problem. So I've reached the point in the, let me see, I think I'm done pushing buttons, sir. So I want to talk for a few minutes. We're down to 24 minutes here. I'd like to use it productively. I've told you what's in my heart here, is I want to have this conversation with you all and with the community. We got to get the golf course strategy cussed and discussed. And we got to reach some conclusions. We can't get a budget done without it. So it seems to me, if you all agree, that the next one of these meetings has to be a golf-related meeting. And I would like to do that after September 11th, when Troon comes in and stands before the community. No one in the community's had the opportunity to be introduced to Matt Malloy. Dan will do that at the September 11th meeting. He is the face of Troon as far as our community is concerned. And there's a lot going on in the golf enterprise that you all need to be brought up to date on. And so if we can plan on after that town hall meeting, I think that gives the golf committee time to wrestle around with the Troon inputs and Larry's inputs. I know Larry's met with Lee Lexell and shared his thinking with Lee. And so, and maybe even bring them in here to give us a report, and we can start down this road on looking at the pros and cons of these different options. Does that make sense? Could we put that on the bin, please? We'll put this together. I'll sit with Campbell and with Walter, put our heads together as far as what we need from staff, what we need from the Finance Committee, what we need from the Golf Committee.
So that's what I was thinking, Matt, because the staff is putting together the first shot at the budget by the 30th of this month.
I got
it. So we're going to have something down on paper, and it may not be complete because of this discussion here and what you need to lay on top of what we're doing.
Well, so let's not confuse 2025 budget for execution with whatever the plan is for golf. Okay, let's get after solving what we got to do in 25 on both the operation side and the reserve side. Whatever adjustments we have to make related to golf, we can make. But everything else, full speed ahead. Okay, does that make sense?
That makes sense. But once you lay down what you're doing with golf, that will then, like you said, go back to what the dues are for the year. It all goes back to that
Trust
point.
me.
Yeah. Yeah, the integrated budget has got to include the 5-year and the 10-year. And so the 9 million or whatever, which is in 29 right now, is going to drive decisions for 2025. So, but obviously it's going to be a lot of work to figure out this. Today, the reserve budget is based on the 2029 construction that we've got from True and from the architect. And I don't think we're going to have anything different, certainly by August 30th. So,
Yeah, Mark, what we're going to talk about is shifting from a known point, right?
yeah, right, exactly.
And so, Campbell, I guess this is my question for you, sir, as far as takeaways. Can we look at utilizing each strategy? One is paying our way. So integrating Larry's thinking, but still got to pay our way. I don't know how we get the $4 million requirement. So 4 million minus 650 is only 3,300. Okay, so you're talking about moving $700,000 of requirement off the table. And if you start moving $700,000 a year for the next 4 or 5 years, that's a considerable bill the community's got to pay, except now it's more expensive, and we still have to solve that problem. And so it's not as simple as saying we're going to cap ourselves at some number, 2.6 or whatever number it might be, and put the 650. The numbers are bigger than that. And so the requirements may not allow us to do that. But we got to figure it out, Campbell. How do we go about doing what the RRAG did for us last year with looking at all strategies, looking at paying it with a special assessment, looking at a loan, looking at just doing it with dues and $300 assessments or no assessments, and looking at a combination thereof. I think if you don't put all that in front of the community, they get to weigh it. Does that make sense to you?
Kind of. I gotta wrap my head around what you're asking, because we did a lot of that work already.
We're shifting from a known point here. I got it. But this time we've got to go slow and bring the community with us. Last time we went fast and failed. And so I'm trying to find the methodology that allows us to fully...
That could have been just the timing and the messaging rather than the analysis.
I'm not talking about analysis. I'm talking about being able to give this to residents so they can say, these are the options. I got to live with one of them.
All right. Okay. I'll think about it. How to go about doing that.
I don't know how to do it either.
Can't do it off the top of my head. I'll say that.
What else should we be thinking about?
Well, the only other thing that, and we can do this when we start doing the work, is, and I talked a little bit about this with Larry, based on my experience, and I was the one that really did a lot of the work for Mountain View as far as doing it, I think hitting a 2026 construction is going to be very, very difficult. I mean, I think we would have to be issuing purchase orders for the design tomorrow for that to happen, realistically, and I think it would still be a really difficult thing. You remember last year, well, when we did Mountain View and we wanted to do it in 2023, we didn't go out for RFQs till probably about March of 2022. We sent it to 5 people. We already had 2 people that were already booked for the following year. So we decided then that at the preserve, we got to go out earlier for our RFQs. We probably got to go out in January of 2000 of the year before 2 years before you do the construction, which means if we're going to do construction in 26, we got to go out for RFQs in January 25. Well, that ain't going to happen. Okay, I mean, so that's one of the things, that's just one of the many things we got to look at.
Yeah,
so.
And I would tell you, all the backwards planning model is in the Vision 2050 document inside the Golf Committee. Now, we've compressed it when we did Mountain View, and we all know compressed timelines aren't in our best interest. And so a lot of that will go into the decisions that we have to make as we go down the road. So besides details associated, is in your mind, how do we help our members understand the complexity of this problem set, is what I'm asking you to think about. Making PowerPoint presentations is easy. Winning the hearts and minds of our members is going to take work. And I'll be humble enough to tell you, I failed miserably at this, so I'd like to see us do it differently. And I'm open to all the thinking that you all can muster to help us get there. If I have to. Dan wants to know if we're going to take questions from our residents. Before I do that, I want to make sure that there's nothing else that anyone here wants to put on the table for the benefit of those of us sitting around the table, as well as our members at home.
I just got one thing that bugs me as an engineer, just replacing pumps before you have the design. It would worry me that if you, once you get the design, then you know the size of the pump. If you just do the pumps right up front, you might have oversized pumps depending. But just a small point, that'll be worked out later on.
Walter, I can kind of address that just a little bit. The Troon people have already kind of talked with Marvin Mills, the irrigation designer group, and it's all about flow, and it's all about how far you're going to go with I'm not the expert, but they're suggesting that those things really are known at this point in time for a future irrigation. But that would certainly be something we should confirm. There's no question about that. But I think they're comfortable that they know those today as to what those future requirements would be. Larry, the only thing and I really appreciate the fact that you've done this. Somebody's put something on a piece of paper, and now we have something to look at and think about. So I really appreciate what you've done here to be able to draw a picture for us. The only kind of concern I think we as residents need to deal with is you do take, for the next 5 years, CIF money pretty much in total, a little bit left over, but pretty much in total. And we right now, and I'll give you big numbers, but we're $1.3 million, $1.4 million, $1.5 million kind of guy with CIF today. So at the end of the next 5 years, when you have taken those CIF monies to use for this project, which is a good use for those monies, and if we don't stop spending CIF each year, like we have been in the past 6 years, we're running about 300 grand a year or something. We will end up in 2029 with almost no money left in CIF. That's just a reality. And it has to, and I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm not trying to have an opinion on any of this, and being very open-minded and appreciative of the fact of what you've presented. But it does give me some concern that, goodness, it took us 6 years to get the $1.3 million. It just doesn't get there quick, you know. It just doesn't get there quick.
Yeah,
but
I
anyway.
started that, Dan, because in the option that everyone voted down, CIF funds are going to be used for 4 years. So I thought 1 more year is probably okay if it gets the job done. Also, if we increase, the fee that goes in there, then those funds, and you're talking around $300,000 a year, could go right back into the fund.
And I think I think, Chuck, you brought that up a couple of times. I think that's something certainly to be considered. Whether or not everybody's going to agree with that issue, I don't know, but I certainly believe it should be on the table, so I agree with you.
Is there an opportunity to reinstitute the GIF?
Everything should be on the table. The reason why GIF was eliminated, there were people on the board at that time that thought we were taking money away from the operating fund. And so they wanted to put those dollars back into the general operating fund. And that's why GIF went away. I got a few minutes left. Is there any question about anything that we've talked about that we haven't answered to your satisfaction?
I don't really have a question, but you were asking how we pull the community along. I think what you did today here is awesome. It really laid out exactly what all the problems are, where they are. There were no answers, but if we could get everybody to watch the presentation from today, I think they would all understand how complicated and difficult this is.
Thank you very much for that observation. It is difficult and it is challenging.
I'd like to understand, Larry, what it means when you say there's 26 months of lost revenue over a 4-year period. What does that mean in terms of playable golf holes per year, per month?
Okay, the
He's
plan
not
they...
going to have those answers.
Okay.
Well, it's a pretty big nut.
Sure. What they came up with was that if you do it over 4 years, you lose 9 holes for 4 months during the summer each year. 9 holes for 4 months. Okay, so...
That doesn't work out for 26 months.
No, I don't think I said 26. We might have missed a year and said 2026, and I said 26, but 4 months for 4 years or 6 months for 2 years. They came up with 8 months if you did it all in a year, but we know better than that because we've already lived through it. They didn't get the courses done in 8 months, so I think that number is wrong.
But I have to help Larry here. Larry is not an expert in golf course construction. The Troon construction team is. They do this routinely. They know what their projections are because of the caliber of companies they would bring to us that would not be the disaster that we experienced in Mountain View. The problem with the Mountain View experience has left a lot of bad taste in a lot of people's mouths, but we can't jump to the wrong conclusions about the future predicated on that experience. We need to learn from it, but we also need to rely on the expertise of experts in this field. And so we can't dismiss the fact that 16 months is different than 8 months, which is different than, and this is all part of the conversation that we as a community are going to have.
When did we start the construction on Mountain View? What month?
May 1st.
So May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. 8 months is what that construction took. No, that was a matter of healing. The real problem was they didn't get that stuff down until too late. If they'd started 3 months earlier, instead of starting in May, if they'd started 3 months earlier.
Okay, Duff, this is going to be all debated in our next meeting. I want to take care of your questions from today's meeting.
First of all, I like Larry's approach. I'm not a big advocate, never have been, of spending $10 million on the preserve course. But at least what he laid out seems maybe there's some value to it in looking at it. I understand Pat's concern also about it's not you've got to get it all on one piece of paper because it may impact other areas as well. But he's got a good place to start, and at least it gives us a way of maybe getting there. I don't know.
You think there's a reason why we let him talk today?
I think so, yes.
I'm going to give you my caution, which I gave to you when I brought up the raising the CIF fee months ago, the ability to raise it, is in looking at operational cost and raising the CIF and working with potential new residents, dues do matter. So the additional CIF fee or raising that, there are comparable communities that already have that we're competing with. But if we start raising the dues, we are already way higher than most communities. And the other thing I'd say about the CIF fee is you do have to put part of it in reserve, a good portion of it, even after this. It's written in the CC&Rs that way for many communities, because as you take on a new asset, and you pay for a new asset, and you put it into your burden, you've got to then maintain it. So if you don't put a portion into the reserve, over time, you're going to get into the hole. The community gets into a hole over time because you have new assets that are added to your burden. So just something to think about.
Thank you.
It was good discussion. I guess I was hoping to hear a little bit more on the ideas and what else and different ways to approach things. I appreciate Larry bringing up the idea of doing the course over stages. Some other things that we've learned from HOA1, some of this stuff, maybe we can do it in-house. Don't know if that makes sense or not, but it's an idea. If we're going to get rid of a bunker, we've got a big tractor. Let's go fill it up with dirt. We've got a lot of extra dirt. So I guess I just want to make sure items like that are still being looked at. And maybe it's a little savings, but you get enough little savings and it makes a difference. The other thing is, reducing turf. That's something that we could also do within our current supplies and labor. Another thing to look at is overall within this whole community, and I know we focused a lot on golf, but there's a lot of waste in this community, and some of it's $100, some of it's $1,000, some of it's a lot more. And I think I'd really like us to look and task our directors, and I know they work hard, and challenge them to cut back on costs. Where can we cut? Where can we improve efficiencies? Improving efficiencies is huge. And there are other ways to bring money in than the ones we talked about, which are the obvious ones. And I think we need to look at that and be aware of it. One of those might be, sorry, but CAM. We have severely underestimated what that is going to cost us. Severely. We are looking at probably close to $500,000 a year. We've already added 2 people in a tractor. Now we need 6 people, 4 trucks, and God knows what else. And that's still not enough. Maybe we want to evaluate and prioritize, why are we putting so much activity in 5 and yet still ignoring some of 4? Should that not have been our first priority? So not saying it's good or bad, but I think it's something. There are many places throughout the community that could be reevaluated and perhaps found some better efficiencies.
I'm going to have to bring a dang clock now. Thank you, Sherry. Hey, look. Can you hear me? A lot of people have opinions. This is very complex work, this HOA management thing. It ain't for amateurs, and it ain't for idea of weak clubs. Reasonable people can disagree. When you work this as hard as we do, it's disappointing sometimes to listen to observations, but it is what it is. And so there's a lot that the board wrestles with. Sometimes we even get it right. And Walter, I'm proud to say sometimes even you get it right and your team gets it right. And so we've used up our 3 hours we have allocated to be together today. I want to express my appreciation to each of you for your contributions here today, but more importantly for your contributions on the serious work that sits in front of us. There's a lack of patience about improving the community. There's a general lack of patience. People don't know how hard it is to turn this ship. It's turning. The results are there. Maybe we don't do a good enough job of articulating the results, and we're gonna get better at it, I know. But the truth is, it's conversations like this that allow us to get to where we're moving in a better direction. And that's all I can ask for. So thank you for your participation. I'll let you know when we're going to get together again.